Welcome to Kaur and Singh VAAD-VIVAAD. You are watching JUS Punjabi, and this is the first ever Sikh debate competition. I am your host, Ashmita. We are in week 5 of the competition, and the quarterfinals are heating up. This competition isn't just unique in that it is the first ever Sikh youth debate contest, but also because it is firmly modeled after the Lincoln Douglas debate model. This means that all of our contestants that have argued one side of the resolution will now argue the opposing side. To reiterate the significance of this format, I should say that this exercise brings the element of not just convincing the judges or beating your opponent in a debate. It brings the element of changing your own perspective and arguing for all sides of a matter. And of course, you, the audience, have been participating as well. You've been voting week after week for your audience favorites in each debate. Once again, I remind everyone watching to scan the QR code and cast your votes during the debates as we do tally and reveal your audience favorite winners at the end of the episode. As we saw last week, Ruhani Singh took the win for audience favorites as well as the judges' favorite this past debate. The breakdown of the votes for audience favorites can be seen on the screen. Now, for the main event, the quarterfinals are underway, and now you've met all 8 of the finalists that have advanced to this round. You heard their stories, their backgrounds, and their experience. Now it's time to flip the script. In today's debate 5 of the quarterfinals, our contestants will once again take the stage, but will be arguing for the opposing stance they took previously. The resolution is the same, but the argument for or against will change drastically. So without any further ado, let's bring out our contestants for debate 5.
Hi Meher, so you're arguing for the opposite side now. Do you feel anything about changing your perspective?
Just like obviously the different cases, contentions, and just staying happy, glad, confident, and going through with a positive mindset.
Is there anything you change for the next round?
Not really. I'll just stay confident like I said, and yeah, I hope it goes well.
All right, perfect. Good luck. Hi Pavit, so you're arguing for the opposite side now. Anything for changing your mindset?
I need to focus on my new moral frameworks and attack the argument differently.
So how do you feel going into this round?
I feel confident I'm going to try my best.
Sounds good. Good luck.
Quick note here, the contestants were once again paired randomly using a pair generator software. And so the debate pairs are different. This is a completely random and new pairing from what you've seen so far. So now I'd like to welcome the contestant who will be arguing the pro side of the resolution. Pavit Singh, please join us on stage. Thank you so much, Pavit. Good to see you again. And of course, arguing against Pavit for the neg side is Meher Kaur. Meher, welcome back. Good to have you as well. The pro side is on my right. The neg side is on my left. As I'm sure you know, you've been following along. You've met these two contestants. You've heard their debates, but now you're going to hear the different perspective. Contestants, please shake hands. Once again, you have seen these contestants before, but you haven't heard how they're going to step into the other side and present the opposing argument for the chosen resolution. So, Pavit, once again, you've already been, at this podium, you've argued the other side. Is this harder or easier for you now?
To me, it's harder because I've already looked at it through one perspective and now I have to change my mindset when I'm doing the other side.
Absolutely. And what about you, Meher? Do you feel you have any advantages coming into this once again, or do you feel like it's more difficult to argue the opposing side?
I agree with Pavit. I have to change my perspective and stuff like that, but I'm keeping a positive attitude.
Absolutely. Once again, these kids have been, this group of Sikh youth have been practicing for many, many months. And here they are, not just presenting one argument, but two very different sides. So let's begin debate 5 of the quarterfinals.
All right, contestants, do you have any questions before we start? Okay, then we'll begin with Bhavit on the pro side, and you have 4 minutes to begin your constructive speech, starting now.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I affirm the resolution. A Gurdwara is a place of worship as opposed to a community gathering place or a learning center. The value for this debate is Sikhism, and my moral framework is worship. I'll provide the Merriam-Webster definition for purposes of clarity throughout this case. The definition of worship is to honor or show reverence for a divine being or supernatural power. Contention 1. The Gurdwara's primary function is religious worship. Singh 2024. The Gurdwara serves as a sacred place where Sikhs come together for communal prayer, engage in devotional singing, and listen to religious discourses. The Guru Granth Sahib, the central scripture of Sikhism, is treated with the utmost reverence and is enshrined in every Gurdwara, placed on a raised platform under a canopy. This sacred text is recited and read during congregational gatherings, underscoring the Gurdwara's role as a spiritual center for worship. The Darbar Sahib, or main hall, provides a dedicated space for these religious practices, offering an environment for reflection, prayer, and connection with the divine. Additionally, the practice of Ardas, a collective prayer, takes place regularly, further emphasizing the importance of worship within a Gurdwara. While the Gurdwara does engage in community service and educational activities, these functions are secondary to its primary role as a place of spiritual devotion and worship. Ultimately, the Gurdwara's main worship is to facilitate religious practices as it remains a, quote, gateway to the Guru, end quote, where Sikhs connect with their spiritual teachings and the divine. This reinforces the idea that worship, as outlined in Sikhism, is the central function of the Gurdwara, making it primarily a place of worship in line with the moral framework of worship. Contention 2. The architecture and the design of a Gurdwara are focused on worship. Qasim 2023. The Gurdwara serves as an ideal environment for worship as it is centered around the Guru Granth Sahib, the holy scripture of the Sikh faith, which is placed at the heart of the space. The scripture's central role in the Gurdwara emphasizes the devotion and reverence that Sikhs place on worship. Every service revolves around singing hymns and reciting the teachings from the Guru Granth Sahib, with the congregation actively participating in this collective act of worship. Additionally, practices such as bowing before the scripture and sitting on the floor together symbolize humility, equality, and devotion. These elements of the Gurdwara reinforce the importance of worship in providing a space that allows individuals to connect spiritually while fostering a sense of community. Contention 3. Seva, or selfless service in the Gurdwara, is an act of worship. Sikh Missionary Society of UK. In support of Contention 3, Seva, selfless service in the Gurdwara, is indeed an act of worship. Sikhism teaches that the highest form of worship is the service of humanity, and this is reflected through Seva in the Gurdwara. Seva is not simply a charitable act, it is a spiritual practice that connects the individual to the divine. The Gurdwara, as a place of worship, becomes a sacred space where Seva is performed as a sign of respect to God. By engaging in Seva, Sikhs align themselves with the teachings of the Gurus, who emphasize that service to humanity is equivalent to service to God. Guru Nanak Dev Ji and the subsequent Gurus lived by this example, showing that selfless service in the community kitchen or langar, cleaning the Gurdwara, and helping those in need were always to embody devotion to God. Importantly, Seva is performed without any expectation of a reward or recognition, reflecting true humility and selflessness, which are key aspects of worship in Sikhism. In this way, Seva is not just an act of social service, but a direct expression of reverence and love for the divine. This concludes my pro speech.
Mahir, would you like to use any of your prep time?
Could I use 30 minutes of my prep time?
Alright, this concludes your 3 minutes of prep time. You now have 7 minutes for your constructive speech and your rebuttal, starting now.
I negate the resolution that a Gurdwara is a place of worship for Sikhs. My value is Sikhi. Sikhi is not limited to individual worship, but encompasses community service, seva, and learning. The Gurdwara fulfills these broader roles, making it a community gathering place and a center for spiritual and practical education. And my moral framework is promoting the collectiveness of Sikhi. Promoting the collective spirit of Sikhi ensures that the Gurdwara serves as a space for both individual and communal growth, aligning with the Guru's teachings on unity and equality. Now, my first contention is, Gurdwaras are designed to be communal gathering places. Gurdwaras are explicitly designed as communal gathering places, reflecting Sikhism's core values of equality, inclusivity, and community. The term Gurdwara, meaning Guru's door, symbolizes an open and welcoming space for everyone. Central practices like langar emphasize communal service and equality, where free meals are served to all visitors, fostering social bonds and shared responsibility. The concept of Sangat further highlights the communal role of Gurdwaras, as Sikhs gather for collective worship, meditation, and learning. Architecturally, Gurdwaras are designed to accommodate large gatherings, with central halls for congregation and dedicated langar spaces for shared meals. Historically, Gurdwaras like Guru Nanak's Kartarpur Sahib served as centers for communal living. Stated in the article by the Sikh Missionary Society, events like weddings, Gurpurabs, and Sikh festivals such as Vaisakhi also underscore the Gurdwara's function as a place for interaction and cultural celebration. Rooted in Guru Nanak's teachings of collective responsibility and openness, the Gurdwara's identity as a communal space is integral to its purpose. Contention 2. Education is a core function of a Gurdwara. Education is a cornerstone of Sikh philosophy, and Gurdwaras fulfill this need by providing spaces dedicated to learning. They offer instruction in Gurmukhi, Kirtan, and Sikh history, enabling children to understand their cultural heritage and religious teachings. A significant historical example is the establishment of the Akal Takht by Guru Har Gobind Ji. As said in Sikhnet, this institution served not only as a site for spiritual discourse, but also as a venue for addressing community justice and moral instruction, effectively intertwining elements of education with spiritual leadership. Such practices underscore the importance placed on learning within the Sikh faith and the vital role that Gurdwaras play in transmitting knowledge through generations. Contention 3. A multi-purpose role does not diminish worship. The Gurdwaras establish Sikhi as an encompassing way of life, wherein spiritual worship, community service, and education are seen as complementary. The Sikh Coalition states, Sikhs believe that in order to make spiritual progress, both prayer and service must go hand in hand. The Gurdwara is a place where both of these things happen, and where Sikhs can come together to learn and practice these things in community with each other. This connection is evident in the practice of langar, which serves as a form of seva. Service to others is not just a routine, but a spiritual act that embodies the core Sikh values of equality and humility. Also, many modern Gurdwaras host youth camps and interfaith dialogues, which strengthen the community while upholding Sikh principles. I conclude my speech and now transitioning to the rebuttal. As stated by my opponent in the first contention, a Gurdwara is primarily a place of worship. Yes, worship is important, but not the only function of a Gurdwara. Gurdwaras are open to all and serve as centers of community service and education. Now, while the prayer hall is a significant part, Gurdwaras also include libraries, classrooms, and spaces for social gatherings. Many Gurdwaras provide classes, Sikh history lessons, and even training, making them learning centers. Historically, Guru Nanak and other Sikh gurus emphasized that Gurdwaras should be places of learning and social reform, not just prayer. Now, on to the second contention on the architecture is centered around worship. So even the architecture of many Gurdwaras include community spaces, not just prayer halls. Many people visit not just for prayer, but for social service, cultural events, and education. Gurdwaras host marriages, community meetings, educational programs, and even humanitarian aid efforts. Now, on to the third contention on service. Seva is an act of worship. My opponent said that Seva is an act of worship, but the langar, which is a free community kitchen, which is present in every Gurdwara, is a fundamental part of Sikh values. It is about Seva, selfless service, not just worship. If Gurdwaras were only about worship, they wouldn't provide food, education, and shelter to people in need. I conclude my rebuttal.
Would you like to have prep time?
Yes. Can I have 3.5 minutes of prep time?
Yes, starting now. Your time is up, and now you may begin your rebuttal speech in 3 minutes, starting now.
I'll now provide my negation rebuttal to the pro side. I'll start with rebutting contention 1, in which it was said that a Gurdwara is designed as a communal area. So I agree it is designed as a communal area, but for the means of worship, so that many people can come in and worship effectively. If a Gurdwara didn't have the design and size that it would, then the amount of people that come in would have to be lowered, and people wouldn't be able to effectively worship at the same time. I also want to point out that the word Gurdwara itself, the stem of the word is Guru, which is who we worship. Guru, Shabad Guru, which is in Guru Granth Sahib Ji, Vaheguru. That stem is the same, which shows why it should be the reason that we come to a Gurdwara to worship, right? If we take a look at contention 2, which was about education, there are many Khalsa schools which are outside of the Gurdwara, such as Guru Angad Institute of Sikh Studies. The schools do not take place in the Gurdwara, and they're not affiliated with the Gurdwara, they're outside. You can also learn from outside sources, do your own research. You don't have to come to a Gurdwara, you can read books. There are many other sources to learn about the Sikh religion, right? My opponent also spoke about Akal Takat having stuff, but Akal Takat is not considered a Gurdwara. So yes, it has these places for community gathering because it should be. It's a place of politics, community gathering, because it isn't a Gurdwara. So I agree actually, at the Akal Takat it is a place of community gathering, but it's not a Gurdwara. Akal Takat is not a Gurdwara. In the third contention, it was said that it's a Gurdwara can have both purposes, and I believe that the other services, such as a community gathering or learning center, are second to the Gurdwara. There's a reason that when we come into the Gurdwara, the first thing that we do is take off our shoes. If we're just going to a community gathering with our friends, we don't take off our shoes, we don't cover our head, we don't do matta take and bow our head down with the respect that we have when we come into the Gurdwara. There's a different mindset that we have to come into the Gurdwara with respect, because we're coming to worship, right? In my opponent's rebuttal, it was said that a Gurdwara is open to all. Yes, it's open to all, but for the means of services and the means of worshipping. It was also said that there's libraries and classes there, but those books that are there are only there to help you in your Sikhi journey more to worship, right? It was also said that marriages are held in Gurdwaras. So marriages shouldn't be considered a community gathering. The word that we use in Sikhi is called Anand Karaj. The actual meaning of Anand Karaj is the merging of two souls. It never said that it's community gathering, but it's how you can get how through meeting someone else, your bond with Vaheguru will grow more, and how you can worship Vaheguru better. That's what the word Anand Karaj actually means when you come to the Gurdwara, right? And then it was also spoken about Langar and Seva. So Langar and Seva is actually just improving your devotion to God, right?
Thank you, Bhavit.
Yeah. Thank you.
And now you may use your prep time for your crystallization speech. You have 2.5 minutes left.
I'll use the remaining time.
Okay. concludes your prep time, and you now have 3 minutes to have your crystallization final speech.
So I will provide my crystallization. I believe the reason why I won this debate is because my moral framework of worship attacks this case in a more effective way. I'll first go through my contentions once more. My first contention is speaking on the means of religious worship, which is why we come to the Gurdwara. We worship through the kirtan, through the katha, and through the ardas, through the hukam that they provide. Contention 2, the Gurdwara is designed on worship. We walk in, we take our shoes off, we go to matha tek, we listen to kirtan. It's designed so that we can worship more effectively and get closer to Vaheguru, right? Contention 3, seva, selfless service is an act of worship. Seva, doing seva shows our devotion to God, shows that we put ourselves above others. That's exactly what Guru Bani says to do, right? If we take a look then at my rebuttal again, many people coming into the Gurdwara due to the design of it is effective so that many people can worship, right? And then my opponent also spoke about Sangat. So Sangat may be considered as the word community, but it's also the fact that we are worshiping as a community, that we're never alone as Sikhs. We're never alone. We always have people to worship with and learn from on how to get closer to Vaheguru, right? We might think that a Gurdwara may be a place of community gathering and learning, but in the end, that's just Maya. That's an illusion, right? Our ending goal in this life is to make it to Sachkhand, is to get close to Vaheguru and finish the aim of our life. So we shouldn't be worried about this other stuff. We should come to the Gurdwara and try and worship as best as we can and get as close to Vaheguru as possible. So once again, we worship as a community. We worship through what we learn. We're worshiping only. As a Sikh, the word Sikh means learn, but because we're learning as we worship through this journey. This journey is our ending goal in this journey is to be with Vaheguru in the end of our life, and we can only do that through worshipping Vaheguru and trying to become like Vaheguru, right? So once again, there's a reason the Guru Granth Sahib Ji is the first thing when we walk into the Diwan Hall. It's at a heightened platform. It's beautifully decorated. There's a reason that it's like that, because that is the reason why we come to the Gurdwara, right? If you walk into the Langar Hall a lot of the times at the Gurdwara, is it the cleanest? No. Is it the most grand area? No. The most grand area is where the Guru Granth Sahib Ji is, where Guru Granth Sahib Ji is put in Prakash. It's cleaned every day. It's made sure that it looks, as beautiful as possible. So once again, that is why Gurdwara is a place of worship.
Great, thank you, Bhavit. Meher, would you like to use any prep time?
I'll take 2 minutes of prep time.
Starting now.
I have demonstrated that Sikhi is not limited to individual worship, but is deeply rooted in community service and education. Gurdwaras embody this holistic approach, serving as places of worship, community gathering, and learning. By embracing all these roles, Gurdwaras fulfill the Guru's vision of unity, equality, and collective growth. My opponent stated that the Guru Granth Sahib, Kirtan, and Kathas are the center of Sikh teachings. But this also includes social justice, equality, and education, not just religious rituals. The Gurudwaras use these teachings to guide community service, charity, and educational programs. Gurdwaras, defining them solely as places of worship, overlooks their broader significance within the Sikh community. Gurdwaras are not just sites for prayer and spiritual reflection. They serve as vital hubs for social welfare, education, and political activism. The practice of langar and seva demonstrates that Gurdwaras actively promote social equality and community service, extending their purpose beyond religious activities, not just worship. Additionally, educational programs preserve Sikh history and values, language, and music, and hold more value than teaching about worship. Gurdwaras also extend help and provide advocacy for the needy and oppressed, ensuring a platform to social justice movements and defense of Sikh rights. For this reason, the resolution that a Gurdwara is a place of worship is incomplete and limited characterization of the true purpose of a Gurdwara. Thank you, and I now conclude my final speech.
All right, thank you, debaters. That concludes our fifth debate.
You just finished both rounds of debate. How do you feel?
I feel great. I think I did well.
If this is the end of the road for you today at today's tournament, what do you take from all of this?
I think I learned a lot in this experience, and I'm happy that I joined VAAD-VIVAAD.
And do you think you won?
I hope that I won. Yeah.
Sounds good. Good luck. You just finished both rounds of debate. How do you feel?
I think this was like a great experience, and I definitely learned a lot of new things.
If this was the last round for you, what did you take away from this tournament?
Like stay confident. I learned how to like debate more formally, and yeah.
All right, sounds good. Good luck.
Hello, judges.
Hello.
Hello. We are halfway through the quarterfinals. How are we feeling?
Feel good.
Feeling good.
Yeah.
That was a close one.
That was. Yeah.
That's going to be a tough one. Excited to see what the outcome is. As a coach, I was really impressed by both debaters being able to switch sides and really lean into jukti, or the techniques that we've taught them, building the argument bottom up, starting with that value framework, and then building the case from there. And I was really happy to see that, and I hope that you all saw this as well. They're not attached to an argument; they're attached to the technique and the structure of the Lincoln Douglas format. So that was really heartening to see. The other thing that really caught my eye was the evidence that was presented by both of the students was the same, but the way they used that evidence was for a completely different argument.
So going right into it, with the architecture point.
Yeah.
So as Divjot mentioned, so Bhavit came at it from a perspective that the architecture underscores the importance of worship, or the focus on worship in the Gurdwara Sahib. Whereas Meher took it from a perspective of there are these large communal gathering spaces such as the Langar Hall that promote qualities like equality and the importance of seva. So it's interesting how they took different approaches with the exact same argument.
Yeah.
But even to that point, where I think with Bhavit, like his I felt like went through, whereas when he was doing his rebuttal for Meher's, he specifically spoke to the points that she brought up with the design aspect of it. Whereas I feel like Bhavit's went through, but Meher's did not. And then even specifically, like when Bhavit was rebutting that one, I really liked when he used, because they both also use the same evidence in terms Gurdwara means the gateway to the Guru, right?
Right.
And I really like when Bhavit flipped Meher's definition of like, yes, like when we look at the stem of the word, and he took Guru and looked at Gurdwara, Wahi Guru, and connected to Shabd Guru. Right. So look and connected her point right back into the worship aspect of it. So I thought for that point, Bhavit's rebuttal was really strong.
Yeah.
For that point too, when she brought up the Guru's door, I was like a little not convinced about it because it felt too generic to tie to her point. And then Bhavit said, well, yes, the Guru's door, as in Guru worships.
Bhavit did a really good job in addressing that aspect to it.
Yeah, and we can dive. I feel like one other discussion point that we should have is how well they argued within their described framework and their value criteria. So I think Bhavit did a really great job tying things back to worship, his value criterion and value of Sikhism and worship. And he also brought up the Merriam-Webster definition of all of that as well.
That was good.
Yeah.
I love that part.
Yeah, because you can't really debate against an actual definition of something, right? So I think his general case was pretty well structured to support his thing. Now on the other side, as we talked about why I'm feeling a little 50-50, I feel like Meher did a pretty good job as well, identifying a proper framework and then constructing her case around that.
Yeah, I feel like Meher, like, she kind of had the same flaws that she had in her earlier round on like not utilizing her crystallization speech fully, because
Yeah.
like Bhavit went back to his value criterion and saying how like worship is more effective for what we're talking about, and I would have liked to hear that from her a little bit more and just hear on why, because she had a great value criterion and it would have worked well for her argument, but
Right.
just hammering it in would have like
Right.
really done it.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, not a specific point, but like just when I was looking at the overall stuff and like just the flow of everything, I felt Bhavit did a really good job in contesting each and every one of Meher's points, where I felt the opposite wasn't being done as strongly.
She described in her first rebuttal that Gurdwara Sahibs have libraries, classrooms, and social gathering spaces. And I think that was the rebuttal to the fact that the central
Function is worship.
function is worship, exactly. Thank you. And then her second one was that Seva is not just about worship. We serve people from many backgrounds. And then her rebuttal to his third point was people also visit the Gurdwara Sahib for cultural and social services.
Yeah.
Now, I think he did a great job addressing the libraries, classrooms, and social gathering spaces, because again, going back to, he spoke that the communal design is for worship. But then similarly, the libraries that exist, the classrooms that exist are all so you can learn things that are pertinent to worship.
Yeah.
So you can become a better Sikh. Right?
But did Bhavit call that out?
He did.
Or?
He did.
Okay.
In that one specifically. Now, the other two rebuttals, I didn't catch anything that he addressed. Like for the people also visit for cultural and social services, that he didn't touch that one. And then similarly, he didn't really address much that Seva is not just about worship. We serve people from many backgrounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For that one, I caught that he, not specifically that Seva is not just worship, but like we're doing it for people from serving many people from different backgrounds. I mean, it wasn't a strong one, but I felt like he did kind of mention that he like all of that, like Seva in itself is just it's improving our devotion to God, because and then he brought that back to his point of worship, right? Like Seva is an act of worship.
Right. Service to humanity is service to God.
Yeah, so I feel like he did have that one. So like even like when we're serving and doing Seva for people outside of our community,
Right.
like the way that he argued, like that is still doing worship to God, right? Like,
Right.
because Guru Sahib tells us that, Seva to humanity is worship as well. So I thought he did a good job for that one at least.
One thing that kind of confused me in his first rebuttal speech was how he brought up how he had this really great speech about how marriages aren't an example of just communities gathering. It's like actually the joining of two souls, making it very spiritual. But I'm not sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Meher specifically mentioned marriages in her contentions. So it kind of came out of nowhere.
I don't recall her specifically mentioning anything.
I don't recall either, and I hope like as we're talking about it now, like the editing, they just put it back and show us that he did talk about not marriage, but it was a really good point. But yeah, I put a question mark too, like strong point, but was it even brought up by Meher or not?
Yeah, it seemed like a bit of a distraction. Why don't we go back to Meher's second contention about education is the core function of a Gurdwara. So she pointed out like the dedicated spaces and like the other teachings that go on, which she reiterated in her rebuttal as well.
Yeah.
About his first point. And then it was interesting how she also brought up the Akal Takat and how while they have it emphasizes like spiritual discourse, and it also has a lot of justice, leadership, politics as well. And then Bhavit in his rebuttal said 3 times that Akal Takat is not a Gurdwara. So that was his thing in rebuttal, and she didn't go back and touch it. But how do we feel about that definition of the Gurdwara? Again, she didn't address it, but that could be a bit of a controversial statement to say.
I would agree with that.
I think in that sense, like Bhavit also, because Bhavit does a good job in defining the words that he's going to be using throughout the debate. One thing that I absolutely loved was he starts the debate, let me define worship, right? And then the first contention was Gurdwara being a primary function, and he goes into the definition of a Gurdwara. And he says, it's a gateway to the Guru, and if the Guru Granth Sahib is in a building, it's a Gurdwara.
Right.
Which is true for the Akal Takat.
Yeah, so the Guru Granth Sahib is in the Akal Sahib as well, so by his own definition, right, like it's not matching, right? What he's saying. But yeah, you're right. Like Meher could have easily called that out, and then like even like to Meher's other point when she brought about like dedicated schools, right? Like Bhavit also hit that on like rebutted that as well. Like he's like Punjabi schools outside of the Gurdwara settings, right? He had a very specific example. So I think it was a knock on Bhavit, the fact that he gave the definitions and then he didn't stand by the definitions when he was trying to give a rebuttal. Right. But some of his other rebuttals I felt were really strong. Another
thing he mentioned is crystallization speech, which didn't sit super well with me, is when he was talking about Maya and how this community service is kind of like an illusion, is like blocking your pathway to God. Like first, I feel like a lot of people would find that a little bit like one-sided as well.
Yeah.
And saying that community is actually like blocking your pathway to Vaheguru.
Right.
And he literally said verbatim, like, don't worry about the other stuff, just worry about your
He
pathway
did say
to
that,
God.
the other stuff, yeah.
Which I felt like it was a little bit disrespectful to like every other aspect of Siva. I know he kind of mentioned Siva's worship actually,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's just the wording of that felt a little off.
I see what you mean, because on the one hand, right, like, so he says specifically service to humanity is equal to service to God. But then, what's the way that we actualize that service to humanity, right? It's usually through some form of coalition. You can help one person on your own, right? But you usually get people together through your community, mobilize people in order to help and promote the greater good.
Yeah.
So I do agree with that. That I think that was a bit of an oversimplification of the community aspect, and just saying that it is mine in that sense.
Yeah, but I think in that sense, like, I mean, like, we're seeing this, right? I would like to see Mary calling stuff out, right? I think
Yeah.
she let a lot of stuff just slide. And again, like, you're pointing out a lot of, like, good things that Bubba's could have done better, right? And again, like, that's the whole point of the show, right? For them to learn from these, from this. But again, like, Meher didn't call any of this, or she didn't know,
Right.
like, she just let a lot of it slide through,
Right.
which I think hurt her at the end quite a bit.
Yeah, because one thing I would have really liked to see from her was better use of her crystallizations.
Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, and that's the thing that I've noticed with, it's not just her, like I've noticed that with other contestants as well, competitors as well. But it's like, it was disappointing to see, because Bubba, for example, he made full use of his crystallization. He took the time to discuss his framework again and why he feels that it was superior.
Yeah.
He took the time to restate the main part. He didn't go word for every one of his contentions, but he restated the gist of every single one. So
Yeah.
we were aware of it again, right? And then he carried through some of the rebuttals that he had that we can all agree were some of the stronger ones. The other ones that are a little bit controversial, he kind of seemed to have dropped them a bit. He didn't bring them up again after that in his crystallization. But then on the other hand, with her, she didn't really she didn't restate all of her contentions as far as I was aware. And then she didn't readdress all of her rebuttals that she made. She carried through a couple of them, but she didn't bring up all of them.
I think we're in consensus.
Yeah.
You wanna?
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah.
Well,
Signed it
speaker
up.
points. What do you?
Yeah.
Speaker points. I think honestly, I'd give. Let's see. I think Meher was still really strong spoken. I'd give her a 9 again. And Bubbit, I think he had a few places of stumble in his rebuttal. Probably an 8.
For me, they're tied. I would give them both a 9. I think they both did really well in terms of their debate technique and their speaker capabilities. Yeah.
Another logical fallacy that comes up a lot, this is called the straw man argument. So when you're debating your opponent, if your opponent misrepresents your argument, you know, if they say you've put together a lot of research, a lot of thought, a lot of time, and your opponent says, well, this person, all Usman is saying is just this. What they're doing is they're kind of simplifying your words to make it easier for them then to attack you. You see this a lot in political debates. It's a very common tactic, and you want to always be aware of it. That's why we encourage the kids to do your research, but also to know, not just blindly do your research, but kind of know what you said and be able to reiterate it. Say, no, that actually wasn't my point. My point was this. Because your opponents in the real world, outside of formalized debate, will always try to simplify things for their own benefit to make it easier for to make it easier to score points with the audience, to make it easier for them to attack that. That's what's called a straw man. If you create a straw man, you can easily burn it down. So this is something to be aware of. And one of the things that you can avoid, how you can avoid against this, is something we call the steel man, which is when you're practicing your debate arguments, think about the best possible argument, the steel man, of what your opponent could think of to say against you. If you do that, that'll help you make a better argument in the first place and help you be more prepared to win your debate round and win your debates in real life.
once again, you're watching the Kaur and Singh VAAD-VIVAAD debate competition. Every week we've been presenting to you various contestants debating in the quarterfinals of this competition. We're on debate 5. We have 3 more to go. And as you've been seeing, from debate 5 and onwards, the contestants have swapped sides and are now arguing the opposing viewpoint from their previous debate. So, on this particular debate, we have Bhavit Singh arguing the pro stance and Meher Dhal has argued the neg stance. Before I release the winners of this debate, as per our judges, I want to, of course, do the audience favorites because you've been following along, you've been voting, and today we're going to announce who you think was the better, or I should say, who you feel was your favorite contestant from debate 5 of this competition. The audience winner for debate 5 of the Kaur and Singh VAAD-VIVAAD competition is Bhavit Singh. Bhavit, congratulations. The audience clearly seems to love how you debate. What do you have to say to them?
Hello audience, I really appreciate you guys and you've taken out time in your day to watch the VAAD-VIVAAD debate show and you voted for me and I really appreciate it.
Okay, now it's the moment that we've all been waiting for. We have a live audience in our studios in New York City. The judges, the contestants, the coaches, the parents, the friends, the family, they're all here. And the winner of debate 5 of this competition is... Drum roll, please. Bhavit Singh. Congratulations, Bhavit. And with that, another debate comes to an end. We will pick up from here next week. Until then, you can write to us at ashmita@jusbroadcasting.com or info@jusbroadcasting.com or follow along on our social media pages. This is Ashmita signing off.
I'm Upkaran Singh Pogal, a tech professional and real estate investor. Like many people, I used to think the only way to build wealth was by working hard at a 9-to-5 job. That all changed when I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The book opened my eyes to the power of investing, how real estate can create passive income and long-term wealth rather than just relying on a paycheck. I realized that building a portfolio of properties was a way to create financial freedom and gain control over my future. So, I dove into real estate investing, and let me tell you, it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made. Investing is key to securing financial independence. Whether you're looking for side income or a long-term strategy, real estate can make it happen. I'm passionate about giving back and teaching others how to get started on their investing journey too. So, if you're interested in learning more about real estate investing, feel free to follow me on Instagram and shoot me a DM.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. This is Harman Singh, Executive Director of the Sikh Coalition. For more than 20 years, the Sikh Coalition has worked to reduce hate, violence, and discrimination experienced by the Sikh community. Nationwide, we work in the court system, in policy, in education, community development, and media and communications to raise the Sikh profile and build a new future for Sikh youth. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.